Hi everyone, I can finally record today. My voice and my nostrils are pretty much okay, so here we go. I'm going to talk about four things that you discussed earlier. One, dissenting voices in community organizing. Two, how to bring those dissenting voices together. How to have a balance between critiquing a policy or a program that you don't support and advocating for parts of that program that you might support. And the final thing was public demonstration. So, um, oops. So you can actually be successful in building relationship and community with dissenting voices. So if we're talking about a large-scale social movement such as environmental concerns around climate change, those are fundamentally differences in how people see the world and how they understand what is happening in our environment. Those are unlikely to change. However, when you have small scale or community based dissenting voices, there is a possibility that you can actually help them to build community and build relationship by having open dialogue. So for example, if a community member or community members are anxious, excuse me, about having a shelter, for example, in their community, and they have stereotypes about what would happen in terms of elevated crime rates, you can actually bring them in a space to have dialogue about, and challenge some of those stereotypes. You can bring hard facts and statistics. You can bring in community experts, people who have lived experience, and have dialogue. I think when people are dissenting about things like that, sometimes they're afraid that their families are going to be harmed by some unknown entity. Of course, there are also built-in biases, class-based, race-based, so on and so forth, that may enter into the discussion in a hidden way. But I think there are opportunities to build community and build relationships under those conditions. Excuse me. The next thing is, how do you balance criticizing or critiquing a policy or a program while advocating for it? I think that's something that's pretty common today, is that we don't necessarily like a policy or a program from start to finish because most programs are government funded and they're not significantly funded. Sometimes those programs are oppressive in themselves, and while you might believe that it's important to have a program that would do certain kinds of things, the program that maybe you're funded for will not necessarily do what you want, and so you might feel the need to protest that the program isn't properly situated and it's not properly funded, but also you recognize that it's better to have something that you can work with than have nothing at all. So within your own self, I think you need to make a decision about what you think is important and what you can work with. We unfortunately are living in a time where neoliberalism is the rule of the day, and where everyone is asked to do extraordinary things with very little funding and very little resources. So I think you can do both. It's just a matter of determining what you have, how you can work with what you have without compromising your integrity. Sometimes I think we compromise our integrity anyway, whether or not we're advocating or not. The other final thing I wanted to touch on is public demonstration. This is a really critical point. There are lots of people on the front lines demonstrating publicly. I would suggest that certain bodies are more at risk than others. So the more visible you are, the more quote unquote unusual you look, and the more not normal you look based on um, restricted or inflexible definition of what is supposed to be regular, you're more likely to be targeted by law enforcement and or arrested. So there are some people who might not want to do public demonstrations because the risk is just too high. I, for example, used to do a great number of public demonstrations when my children were younger. And I stopped after a while because I really felt that as a woman that was caring for my children alone with the support of course, my extended family, which includes blood and non-blood folk, I really felt that I couldn't afford to have been arrested because then I didn't know what would happen to my children. So I didn't want to stand the consequence of that. So sometimes people choose to demonstrate or not for different reasons and we don't know. But there is hope because you can actually affect the political process and you can contribute through your own activism in many different ways, very different from public demonstrations. If also you are a government worker or you work in a certain institution or for a certain company, you might not want to have your face splashed across the local newspaper or the television for your colleagues or your employer to see, because it might mean you lose your job. And where you used to be able to affect some kind of change because you had some financial means, you had a home, or some kind of resources, if you lose your job and you don't have those resources, your opportunity to affect change may be decreased. So only you can decide what the risks are and what the consequences are of putting yourself on the front lines and in public demonstrations. That's it. I'll see you in the next video.